Life has a master plan. The problem is, it's behind a curtain and you're not aware of it. But through astrology, you can be. And by the end of this video, I'm going to share with you this master plan and how you can become more aware of when you come to these hard points in your life, when you come to these pivot points and these critical choices that you have to make. What is the reason you're getting them and how can you work with them? There are 5 planets that play a key role in this. They are the slow-moving planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Let's take Jupiter, for example. Jupiter takes 12 years to go around your chart. So here you are, born, first day on Earth. It takes 3 years for Jupiter to move around and make a square with what your natal position was. That square is an internal conversation about what fits, what doesn't fit. There's a pressure point. 3 years later, it meets up at age 6 and it forms an opposition to your natal Jupiter. That's a louder conversation, external things happening in your environment, like going to school, that challenge your natal Jupiter. And then at age 9, it goes up to its second square, and it has another conversation. It's making an assessment, what fits, what doesn't. And that's an internal battle, and you're changing yourself. And then at 12, Jupiter meets your natal Jupiter again and says, okay, time to clean out the closet, what fits, what doesn't, and you start again, building on the lessons of your natal Jupiter and its placement in its sign and in its house and with its aspects. This chart illustrates how this process works. Here you have Jupiter. It's returning to its natal position at age 12, a whole new start, cleaning out the closets. At 18, it's going to form an opposition to your natal placement, challenging that natal placement to grow through opposition. There are squares in between here, but it made the chart too busy, so I omitted those, but they're there. And then you have another conjunction at 24, and it works in harmony with transiting Saturn's contact with your natal Saturn. At age 7, you get your first square. At age 14, you're going into high school, right? At age 21, you've graduated high school. You're going into college. At 29, you get your first Saturn return. And then here's Uranus awakening you before you go into university or whatever you choose to do after high school, bringing about new ways of perceiving things. And you get an opposition around age 42. And look at all these other things happening around age 42. And then you have Neptune, the Imagineer, coming in around age 40 with the first square, along with Pluto, challenging you to unearth the shadows in your life, to let go of those things for this final part of your life. And then there are a lot of aspects around age 62, another huge growth period, and again in your 80s. So that chart illustrates the timing of the different planets and what they're doing to help you be the hero of your story, to explore the planetary placements that you got, that your soul is here to write about in the journals of the universe. So what is the condition of these planets in your chart? Do they have any aspects? What element are they in? What mode are they in? Planets in a cardinal mode are going to experience confidence versus chaotic, because cardinal planets and placements like to start things, whether it's a cardinal house or a cardinal sign. Your fixed planets, well, they're doing the balance between being stubborn versus being structured. They're moving things around. They have to take things down and rebuild. And then you have the mutable planets or the mutable houses. Those are wrestling with indecision and discernment. They have to make the environment just right, decide what to keep and what to let go, to be able to build and to be able to start again, to keep the momentum going. So one of the things you have to do with your planet when you're doing this kind of what is the master plan of my chart is to say, well, why was that planet placed there? Because you're there, you get that planetary placement because there's something for you to do with it. There's both a challenge and there's a gift with that planet, an ability. Your job is to integrate these aspects when you get them. And of course, if you have aspects to your natal Jupiter or these other planets, it complicates the story. In my birth chart, Jupiter is in Pisces, the healer or the Houdini. The idea with Jupiter and Pisces, the ask, is that I will expand my spiritual knowledge or expand my knowledge of the unseen. It's in the seventh house. The seventh house is a competitive house. It's a comparison house. It is developing your power in relationship to another power. It's over on that, side of the chart we talked about in my last video, or one of the last videos. So it's understanding powers beyond the self. When we're first born, we get to know our planets, and they create some memories for us in our youth. And that helps set up the story that we're going to unfold throughout our life. So when I was a little girl, Jupiter and Pisces, I would talk to plants, I would talk to bugs, I would talk to inanimate objects. I even still name my cars. But that wasn't received very well by others. I was defying this logical world. And in my family, it was a very logical family. My mom is a sun in Aquarius, so she very much is aspiring to be, ruled in the mind and of the mind. My father was the same way. Brothers kind of the same way too. So there was a lot of emphasis on that. And you think about a young child going to school, the emphasis on logic. So I got a lot of pushback, and I have throughout my entire life around my knowings or trusting the unseen or simply knowing things that I shouldn't know. And that knowledge being dismissed formulated a lot of the key battles in my life. For the Jupiter story, we're going to travel back to 2010. Both my daughters were in school at that point. I was very involved in the schools, but I still had spare time between, exercising, making meals, all this other stuff. My husband traveled, so it was pretty much just me and the kids during the week. I decided I wanted to go back to school. I was going to get a degree in nutrition so I could do a blog and teach kids about nutrition. I was going to develop some courses for people who, homeschooled and stuff like that. In the course of getting this degree, I come across this class in religion, and I am not a person who reads the Bible. Haven't read it. My husband reads it every day, twice a day. Not me. Anyway, I have to write this paper. So I write this paper from my perspective, which was, I felt very bold at the time because I know I'm not like other people. Jupiter and Pisces, you tend to feel alienated because you're not like others, and that's a strong theme in me growing up. It's and an introvert as well, so not a lot of friends. I think I have 3, husband included. So I took this class, I wrote this paper, and the teacher was so impressed with it, he read it aloud. And it was one of those moments, I knew when he said, I'm going to read this paper to you, I knew it was going to be mine. I get knowings all the time. And then he read it. And in the process of him reading it, I'm getting all of this stuff moving inside me. And I could almost feel life shifting for me at the moment. Now, forward to the square, a few years later, in 2012, I had stopped going to school, but I was still writing. Jupiter was in Gemini at this point. I was reading The Artist's Way. I was doing the daily pages. I was researching writing techniques. I was reading a ton, and I was reading differently. Little did I know what would explode about a year later. Right after that first square, I swear to God, this is so unreal, but I'm sitting down one day, and all of a sudden this book starts coming to me, this novel, and I'm like, what is this? And I can't not write it. So I start writing it, and I'm getting up at 2 a.m, right? And I'm writing this stuff until the kids get up, and then I exercise, I make the breakfast, take them to school, come back home, and write and research. And it becomes this series. Now, I have never had an aspiration to write a novel before in my life. I didn't write poetry, nothing like that. But I'm writing this thing. And before I know it, it becomes something that I can do something with. I'm undergoing character development kind of stuff. I mean, if you're a writer, you'll know all this, but I wasn't, so I didn't. So there was a lot of Gemini stuff going on, right? I'm juggling a whole lot of things, and I'm just taking in my environment very differently. The opposition happened in Virgo, and that was in 2015. By then, I had that first novel done and I had sent it off to be edited, and there was quite a bit of time while they edit. And in that time, it wasn't necessarily so I got the book edited to get it back. It was like my spirit guides were saying, look, stop thinking for a moment. We need to get through. And so in that Virgo time period, I was rethinking the novel. I was still doing research on how I wanted it to evolve. And if you've watched any of the other videos on the rules, that's when the rules came to me, about these rules of life. There are 9 of them, and there are universal rules, there are societal rules, and the novel series will get into that in a hidden way, because Pisces like to do it that way. Nothing is ever clear with Neptune or with the Pisces. So that's what was happening in 2015. I was discerning how to balance it all, because I'm still like getting up at 4 in the morning to exercise, to do that's when HIIT stuff was in. You're up on boxes, kicking and all that stuff, developing my muscles, right? Staying strong. And on the elliptical, getting notes and thinking and downloading, jumping off the elliptical to write down things. It was total chaos. Now, fast forward again to 2018, I had that second version of the novel edited. And now I was rethinking writing it in the first voice. It's like, no, that's not right. I need to write it in the third voice, because it's about 2 people who have known each other in previous lives and they come back in this life. And it's in very different circumstances. But that's what was happening in 2018 in that third square that was in Sagittarius. I was expanding my knowledge still on writing. I had that second edit come back, and it wasn't necessarily the edit that changed anything, the editor's notes. It was the process that I went through, while doing the website. I was also creating a website then, and all the writing I was doing there, ideas were getting clearer. I mean, I was just channeling so much. It's just like stuff was just coming down so fast, I had a hard time sorting it out. Hence, when I set this stuff off to be edited, it was like, okay, will you sit down now and quit thinking so we can get through? And so things got sorted out on very long walks. I used to go on like 8 to 10 mile walks and just think about things. So then by the time my Jupiter return happened in 2022, they were like, okay, you've restructured this novel, and I won't bore you with all the details. I've done all this different stuff, all 8 of the books, in this different way, and I've written a lot of sections of the different novels. But it's like, you need to do YouTube, because you need to get comfortable talking to people and expressing who you really are, because you're afraid of doing that because of the criticism that you will get. Like 3 views on a video, right? Whatever. So that was my Jupiter process. So you can see from 2010, a simple idea to go back to school to study nutrition has evolved into something over the years that has totally changed me in my outlook on life. So now I have this next return. I'm going to be going into my square in 2025. And things did change then. But let's jump on to Saturn. So Jupiter returns you get often in your life, like 6 to 8 of them if you live to be in your 80s or 90s. With Saturn, you get 3 opportunities. Around age 30, sometimes sooner, around age 60, and around age 90. I have had 2 Saturn returns, so I feel qualified to talk about them with a little bit more insight than I would have in my 20s when I was first starting to study astrology. In my chart, I got Saturn placed in Aquarius, and it's in the 6th house. Saturn in Aquarius is asking me to go through the life lessons of being myself, of expressing who I am and my ideas and my beliefs, my ideologies. Saturn in Aquarius suggests I'm familiar with the concept of being alienated, because you're looking at the shadow side of Aquarius. Aquarius is the corporation or the cult. You belong or you are controlled. In other words, you sell your soul to belong. So you don't really own yourself or your thoughts or your beliefs or your ideologies. In the 6th house, Saturn is a hard worker. It wants that kind of approval. I am always searching for belonging because of that Aquarius marking. But I'm always feeling the shadow of that, of not belonging. So I will do things like overserve not think of myself, do more than is required so I can be, get the applause and to be seen as a useful engine in old Thomas the Tank Engine terms. So Aquarius, corporation of the cult, in a fixed sign means I have to move a lot of fixed thought, bricks of thought, and I have to rearrange them. I have to get rid of the idea that I don't have value just because of who I am and what I say and what I create. It's not about how much I do or how much I earn or how much I am needed or how much I give to others. Okay? If you have any sixth house placements, this is going to resonate with you. So I had my first Saturn return in 1992. It was in Aquarius, and I was living in New Jersey at the time. My husband and I were working for a large corporate telecommunications company, and I had worked my way into management, and New Jersey was not my crowd. The corporate environment was not my crowd. I was a creative. I'm different. I think differently. I can't help but be me. And in those moments when I would let me escape, I would get odd looks. So it didn't really fit, right? But what I had done by this Saturn return is I had created my own life. I had left home when I was, just after graduating high school. We did not have a close family. I had created by myself, not with I think my husband and I were married then. Yeah, we were married then. Not through my husband's help, but I had created my own life. I bought our first house. I had my own bank account. We used to keep things separate because he was divorced, and it was just easier to keep money separate at the time. I was buying the furniture. I was doing all that stuff. I had money to spare, was investing. It was great. Crickets from my parents. When we moved from New Jersey, from Georgia, for me, if my kids move away, I'm talking to them, texting them all the time. My parents, not a sound. Rarely a call. I would have to do it. I would send them things. I would write my mother letters. I discovered this the other day when I was cleaning out the condo because she moved back to Nashville. The letters I would write her, I had no memory of this. It was an interesting time. This is having to do with Uranus. But anyway, there was no connection there. They couldn't see me. And I wanted to be seen as this person who had made it on her own. Okay, I wasn't the dentist that she wanted me to be. Still, I had made it on my own. Crickets. This is a good time to mention there's an aspect between my Saturn and my Moon-Pluto conjunction. The moon can have to do with the mother. Moon and Pluto would suggest, I'm not going to get too far off track here, but there's a lot of shadow work to do with the idea and the role of mother. So it was just an important part to bring up in the Saturn return story, because when we get to the square and Saturn is now in Taurus, it's also on my MC, the height of the chart, the public image that you want to have. This was in 1999. I had just had my first child. I decided, because I was still working in the corporate world, I had the baby, went back after 6 weeks, and there I was, right? I used to have crippling panic attacks. I had lost so much weight. Having a child was a huge experience for me. I was a nervous wreck, and I felt very alone at the time. So that was that Saturn square. And I decided, although my husband had already left the company because we had been purchased by a bank, and both of us were not banking people, whole different world there. And I was still working there. But he was consulting. We were doing fine financially and had saved up a lot of money. We decided I was going to leave and stay home with the child, our daughter. And that was a huge thing to do. I also, in that same square, opened a door to Pandora's box for a decision that would last until most recently. And I invited my mom to move down to Jacksonville with us because she was not close to my brothers either. She and my father had now divorced, and she was living alone up in Georgia. And she too needed to be needed. And I thought, well, maybe I can help her do that. She can establish a life down here, and she can get to know her grandchild. The universe was just asking me to open up that situation because there was work to be done there. The opposition came in 2006. I had another child by this time. She was 3 years old, and she wanted to go to school at like 3 years old. She has Sagittarius placements. And so she was doing a little daycare program, not daycare, it was Montessori. So she was doing like every other day she would get to go for like 2 or 3 hours because I didn't want to lose that time with her. So in that time, I was decorating other people's homes and have an ability to decorate, and people liked it, so I was doing that. And I was, doing bills and all that stuff. But I had also asked my mom to move up to Tennessee with us at that point. So we had left Jacksonville in 2000, and she stayed there. She was quite happy there. I should have taken that as a hint. But I had my youngest daughter, and I said, well, do you want to move up here with us? Well, honey, do you need me? Well, certainly you can come up and help. By 2006, it was clear in her coming up the second time, I could no longer ignore the Saturnine themes that I was invited to see, that she really wanted control of things. And she was doing things behind my back that I had asked her not to do with the kids. TV and food and, it's like go entertain yourself kind of stuff instead of experiencing them, learning from their souls, being with them. She would busy herself around the house instead of being with the kids. In addition, there were tensions between she and my youngest daughter. So 2006, that opposition, I really got to see the tension between my mother and myself, and there were discussions starting to be had about, hey, this is my chance to raise my kids. I've invited you in, but you're not here to take over or to tell me what I'm doing is wrong or to complain about me and what I'm doing. And also in 2006, those same themes of being alienated. We're in this huge neighborhood, right? I couldn't find anyone who experienced the world the way I do. So this was prepping the stage for that third Saturn square, or that second Saturn square, the one that comes after the opposition, tightening things up once again, being put in that corner. And that happened in 2013. Saturn was now in Scorpio, so it was going deep emotionally. With my mother and the opposition, it was in Leo. It was about my power. Leo is about my self-confidence. It was external events picking away at that, teaching me how to be self-confident. But by 2013, with Saturn in Scorpio, my mom and I had had so many discussions, and honest ones, because it's in Scorpio, that she found another family who needed her. And that woman had to put some boundaries in place. But in 2013 in Scorpio, I was deciding what it is that really made me, me. I was channeling that novel. I was writing that thing, and I was like going into parts of myself and memories that made me, who I am, that I hadn't accessed in a long time. And deep emotional truths, including those about my mom and my dad, were coming into play. And I think in that square is when I realized I just can't trust my mom. I never could trust her. There are so many experiences, whether it was the molestation by, the uncle or the doctor, and how that was handled. I just never felt safe with her. She's doing the best she can with Aquarius. She's working through her own stuff. So that 2013 square, I was learning why I didn't trust my mom. My dad wasn't around. The parenting was done by my mom. All the key experiences were with my mom. And I didn't trust her, and I kept trying to build that relationship to be of service to her. And I was, as her psychologist, because I would help her work through all this trauma. If she would blame me, I would help her analyze herself, whatever. I don't do that stuff anymore. That was my last Saturn return. But I really had to go deep. And the novel helped But the experiences with my mom and the oppositions, and that continued with my own self-growth with Saturn and Scorpio doing that hard work, it changed me and it readied me for the Saturn return that I would get when I was around 60. And that was in 2021. Of course, it's in Aquarius. It's in the 6th house. My daughter was going away to college that year, my youngest. It's 20 to 25 minutes away. I go help her move in because she wants to live in the dorms. I come home. I have a total breakdown. I mean, total breakdown of who am I? What am I doing? The work that I've been doing, it hasn't gone anywhere. I've gotten distracted. I don't have the novel series done yet. Where has my life been? What am I doing? Life is in the rearview mirror, and I am the parent of myself. I have so much limited time. Life looks very different at 60 than it does at 30. And what life structures have I put into place by being of service to all the others and not really respecting my own time? I had back issues for the first time in my life during that Saturn return. Structures. So this kind of stuff is what happens in this master plan. Now, with Jupiter and Saturn, the stories are richer, and because they really come into your consciousness, you're kind of familiar with them because they move faster. So they become a part of your daily consciousness. You're aware of those issues. With the universal planets, the stories are quicker, but they are deeper. Uranus is the great awakener. You get your first square around age 20, you get your opposition around age 42, you get your second square around age 60 or so, 62, and then you get your return around age 84. Uranus is one of those generational planets, so lots of people are going to be born with Uranus and Leo because it takes 7 years to get through that sign. Okay, so the house matters a lot in understanding how Uranus is going to do its awakening work in your chart. But for those people born with Uranus and Leo, the idea is that you have to awaken things that you are not aware of that inhibit your self-confidence. And you have to awaken this creative force within you. And included in that creative force is how you enjoy life. It might be implied for the Uranus and Leo generation that somewhere in the history of our beautiful universe, there is some kind of trauma there regarding not being able to express yourself or being demeaned or something like that. So that's why you're here to grow self-confidence. So Uranus and Leo for me is in my 12th house. My job is to become aware of things that aren't seen by others, things that aren't logical. And the Uranus placement is right on my ascendant, so it shapes my worldview. I get lots of knowings with Uranus in the 12th house. I become aware of things that other people don't know. My problem was I used to talk about them. Now I don't. I got a lot of pushback. But that Uranus in Leo in my life helped me feel like I was being guided. Because I felt alienated, I could always count on the divine. Think about Jupiter's placement in Pisces. You see how all these things work together in your chart. Jupiter's asking me to expand my relationship with the divine, to trust it again in that 7th house placement. So my first square to Uranus happened at age 20. I was out of the house. I was in my own apartment. I was putting myself through school, and I was working a couple of jobs, and I decided that I was going to move in with a boyfriend. What was I thinking? Wrong decision. But what I was thinking as a woman is, and this is 1981, we haven't even gained the right as a woman to open up our own bank accounts yet, right? To get our own credit cards. It didn't come until 1988 to get a loan. Not credit cards, but to get a loan. I move in with this boyfriend thinking I'm going to have more power if I move in with him. Wrong decision. Left that experience, did a whole lot of growth with Jupiter and Saturn and growing my self-confidence, and we arrive at my opposition in 2003. Aquarius, it's in my 6th house. I knew I was supposed to have another child, and it's hard to describe knowings to my husband. And he's at a different age, and he had kids from a previous marriage, and he's older than me, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to have another child. It's at the right time, all that stuff. But I knew I was supposed to have another child. And I knew it was going to be a girl. We had a child in 2003. In that same opposition, up comes my mother. And that Aquarius placement is square my MC. So my mom moves up. We have those difficulties. But also, you talk about awakeners. In 2003, I got a call from my brother in June. My daughter had just been born in May. And he was informing me of some health issues that he was having. I was like, okay, I am so positive I'm going to will this thing away. And I'm keeping in touch with him, and we're visiting. I'm traveling down to Atlanta to see him and stuff. And, we were hopeful that he was going to get on a transplant list. But got a call in September that he was going into the hospital. And he didn't make it out. And he died at the age of 47. And being with him in that process as he died, through all the apologies that he didn't need to make. Oh, silly. He was a great brother. He was a Pisces sun. And we connected that way. And it forever changed me. Everything that happened in that hospital, and watching him go through the death process, to walk into it willingly, knowingly that it was there, changed me. That was my Uranus opposition. Changed how I thought. I wasn't actually afraid of death. I am definitely not afraid of it now. I didn't think of it back then. But it is such a quiet, peaceful process, and so welcoming. And so much can be let go in that process for those who the person dying asks to be around. It's a very sacred process, including the death of an animal. I don't know if I ever mentioned it, but our dog Buddy, we had to put him down in the backyard. He just got so sick. But it's a very peaceful process. Okay, the Uranus square, the next one is 62, comes right after your Saturn return. Well, that was the move from Nashville here. So that was on my MC, opposite your IC, which is home and stuff like that. Makes perfect sense. We moved. The situation with my mother came to a halt. There was such clear honesty from me and clear boundaries that no matter what she did in using the tools that she had used growing up with me, those didn't work anymore. I was free. I broke up with that version of me and that version of my mother. I was no longer going to be what I felt was a punching bag or used or abused in a variety of ways. She was not physically abusive, but emotionally and psychologically, yeah. But we all get that stuff, right? My mom's chart and mine do not get on well. You can see this stuff in my chart. Still, you are a conscious soul, able to make decisions. She could have chosen other ways, and she is accountable for the choices that she has made. Let's move on to Neptune. Now, with Neptune, you're going to get your first square at around age 40. Kind of like what's going on with the Saturn opposition and with Jupiter and with Uranus, as we've just talked about as well. Age 40, your first square, and then 80, you get your opposition. Neptune is in Scorpio for me. 14 years in Scorpio. Lots of other people have Neptune in Scorpio. For me, it was in the third house. Neptune is the Imagineer. In Scorpio, it's working through issues of emotional control. It wants clarity of emotions. It wants to get to the truth of understanding the real feelings behind what you own and what you don't own. What you own and that you're willing to share, or why you're not willing to share it. Scorpio is possessive for a reason. It's learning the depths of those emotions and what hurts and why it hurts when you let go of it, or when you hurt it, or when you lose it. It is here for that kind of emotional crisis. So there are a lot of us here with that agenda. In the third house, Neptune is squishy, and it's around, third house has to do with education, early education. It's around what we pick up, that connection with my sun that it has, and putting a light on that Neptune. Again, this is an ability to pick up things in my environment that others don't see, that aren't logical. It made school very difficult because I did not think in algebraic formulas. It was asking me to make sense out of life in a very deeply emotional way, in a spiritual way. It was asking me to let go of logic and to pick up what other people aren't saying. The suggestion is, in a past life, I believed someone just on the simple surface of things. I should have gone deeper. Or I believed someone because I needed to hold on to something. It was my value to be trusting, and I really should have exercised some caution. So I've already covered 2003. I had a baby. I had a knowing I was supposed to do that. 2003, I was talking to my mom differently in a very honest way about how she was trying to minimize what I wanted to do with my children or usurp my authority. All these things were working in tandem to help me become the woman I am today. Now, Pluto, you're going to get your first square around age 42, and then you're going to get an opposition around age 88. Pluto is the shadow work you have to do. In Virgo, again, loads of people born with Pluto in Virgo, it's the shadow stuff of perfectionism, of overanalyzing things, shadows of being useful to others, and giving yourself away to the point where you can't give to others because there is no you left. Who am I? Virgo. What is it that I have? My resources in Taurus, right? What are my resources, my values that I have? Well, Virgo can give that all the way for the sake of being needed, because if you're needed, you have value. Now, in my chart, the moon is sitting right on top of Pluto in the first house. That first house has to do with self-empowerment. Pluto is asking me to dig deep into those themes of being perfect, of being of service to others, of overanalyzing things, of not taking risks. It's asking me to look deep into that, but I don't, you see, because I push it away, because I want to control it. That's Pluto. It pushes that stuff away. It makes excuses for it. That's a shadow of Virgo as well, or any mutable sign. You make excuses for lots of things. I was making excuses for my mom, and did that for many years because Pluto and my moon are right on top of each other in that house of self-empowerment, that first house. So Pluto is asking me to regain my power of who I am. And part of that had to do with working through a theme of mother and how I nurture myself. The moon can mean mother, it can mean many things, but of those many things, how we nurture ourselves, that keep calm and carry on ability within ourselves. Through Virgo, I think about things, I analyze things, I'm constantly sorting things to make sure I understand. Because I need to go through that process. I don't need to be criticized for it. But my mom was a super critic of who I was, how I looked, how I wore my hair. My face was this, my body was to that. My decisions were wrong. And there was just a lot of criticism. She thought the criticism was, insight and wisdom. No, criticism is harmful to others and is intended for you to have as your own observation unless they ask for it. Kind of simple, right? So that Pluto square that I got at age 42, and that was in 1998, that was right alongside that Saturn work of inviting her up to open that wound because I had to deal with it. And that was really intense work that took a long, long time. Many years, many circumstances, many squares, many hits of, Mars to my Pluto and moon combination. It's deep, deep work because I had to make a lot of excuses to realize how excuses don't work. I had to overserve and sacrifice a lot of my life and overwork my body to the point of exhaustion. Many times I would get very sick. And to get those messages. And that's how Pluto works. And I think for the divine, it is really a beautiful thing that it only gives us that first square in that opposition, because Plutonian work is hard. If you have ever had Pluto on your sun or one of your personal planets, you'll get the gist. So that's the master plan. You can see it unfolding in your chart. If you're younger than 60, whatever, you can look forward to these transits and kind of get the gist of it. You can't control what's going to happen. You can kind of understand the themes, and if you think you've got it aced and you're ready to go through it, no. I did that same thing with my Saturn return. It threw all kinds of curveballs that made me a better woman for it. But this is the master plan. The universe wants to help you be a hero. I am in a much better position at 63, past that last Uranus square after that Saturn return, to do this work. The Saturn return alone didn't do it. That last Uranus square held the punch. And boy, am I free, and I am awakened. But that's just my journey. Look at your chart. What are the conditions of the planets that are in your chart? What are the conversations they're holding? How old are you? When can you look forward to this kind of aspect in your chart? And will it be a square or an opposition? Squares are internal. Oppositions tend to be external events, triggering about an internal dialogue. I hope this has been informative, and I'll see you next time.